The story begins with a boy running through a hail of bullets. The next moment he was already surrounded by incredible beauties. The boy's name is Lu Mang. He is a member of the Divine Eagle Special Armed Forces. Well, because he accidentally opened fire on his own during an operation, he suffers from PTSD. He was sent to Haidong University, which was connected to the high school, where he can release his mental trauma through therapy through the life of an ordinary student. At one point some girl yelled for everyone to get out of the way. Turns out her bike chain came off. But our hero didn't hear her screams, she ended up flying right into him. When the girl stood up, she told the guy to get his hands off her. The guy replied that she seemed to be a wizard. After all, she knew his name before he even introduced himself. But the girl didn't understand why he was so happy to be yelled at. Our hero told her that she better be thankful that her face wasn't on the ground because of him. The girl started yelling at him even more, saying he could have at least picked up her bike, not to mention apologizing. In response, the guy started to walk away, telling her to pick up her bike herself. The girl was furious. She yelled that she wouldn't let him leave. She sprinted and jumped right at our hero. A little later, Lu Mang arrived at the teacher's office. The principal asked that he let his hand go. After all, he doesn't have to salute in school today. Since our hero used to be a soldier, he asked that the principal not tell anyone about his past. Thoth replied not to worry, for there would be no problem with that, and let him go back to class. Meanwhile in class, a girl noticed something happened to her friend. A friend told me how she came across a creepy pervert. She added that it was a guy named Lu Mang. At this time, the teacher came into the classroom and told everyone to welcome the new student. These students turned out to be Lu Mang. He said hello to everyone and hoped that they would become friends. That girl immediately recognized him and shouted that it was that creepy pervert. It's because our hero's name translates exactly like that. The teacher thought they already knew each other, and asked him to sit behind Chin Chin. Chin Chin's friend asked if our hero was the perverted one. The guy replied that he was and extended his hand, saying his name was Lu Mang. To which the girl shouted that she would not shake his vile hands, and let him put them away now. Lu Mang immediately realized that these girls were best friends. He said it was just a misunderstanding, and offered to take them to any restaurant that night. Chin Chin's friend agreed and chose the most expensive restaurant. Classmates hearing this began to whisper, saying it was very expensive and he would probably say no. The teacher asked them to flirt after class instead of during class. Lu Mang told Chin Chin's friend to be outside that restaurant at night and not to be late, or else she would regret it. His classmates were shocked by his words. Did he really agree to this proposal? A little later, our hero was lying near a tree and thought that he was here for a reason, because with such beauties, probably, and PTSD can get rid of. The next day, Xiao Shui passed by our hero and wondered why he was sleeping on the desk every day. Unexpectedly, she was called by her friend Jing Qing. Xiao Shui asked what Lu Mang said to her this time. I told her it wasn't that, because something had started again. As it turned out, the girl didn't bring pads, and she didn't want anyone else to know about it. Suddenly Lu Mang came over to her and held out a pad. As it turned out, he overheard everything. The girls were puzzled as to how he dared to eavesdrop on them while sleeping. The guy responded by telling them to stop yelling and just leave quickly so no one would see them. One of the teachers saw the whole thing, and he yelled out that they were women's pads. Everyone around me gathered at those words, and started asking what was wrong. Our hero ran out of the office saying that girls do have a bad temper. Even though he's a soldier from a special unit, he still managed to make a fool of himself at school. Even though he hides his real identity, he still doesn't want to become the laughing stock of the entire school. So the guy started coming up with a plan to beat the odds. Suddenly, he saw San Jianguo, the vice principal for teacher matters, and Jiao Yahuan, the principal's wife. Guy thought it was funny, because for his years, Mr. Guo wasn't even confused about cheating in the middle of the day. Our hero immediately decided to film the whole thing, but suddenly he started to fall, and it was noticed by the head teacher and the principal's wife. A little later, when the principal wanted to enter the office, our hero asked if he was okay. The principal said it was all because of him, as he jumped out and scared him. The principal started telling us that climbing not on a school building is very dangerous and forbidden. Lu Mang replied so that the director would not change the subject. He added that the director did this massage like a fish in water. Our hero asked that the director stop pretending, because he can't forget everything in just a few minutes. But he will continue to say that climbing on the school building is forbidden, so people like him should be punished. Lu Mang said that he adores straightforward people like Director's son, and he has a pretty simple request. A little later in class, Chin Chin didn't understand how our hero dared to come to class again after being humiliated. In class, Lu Mang raised his hand and answered all the questions. His classmates were thrilled, they realized his answers were perfect. The teacher said he was amazing, I bet he was the best at his old school. Toth replied that he was glad to be a part of this class, he didn't think he would need the chemistry knowledge from last year. Meanwhile, in the classroom, one boy woke up to a noise outside. I was very scared when I saw that it was Sun Li and Sun Xiu. These guys walked into the classroom and asked where Lu Tao was. The teacher was unhappy that they had entered the classroom during class and asked that they leave. The guys embarrassedly replied that Teacher Lin had become even more beautiful, surely it was because of her boyfriend. One of the guys asked that his friends talk to the teacher and not let her call anyone. Our hero asked a classmate what is going on here and why no one controls it, but as it turned out, it is the sons of the head teacher. Since the principal is always away, the school is mostly run by the head teacher. And no one can bother his sons, nor can they beat others, rumor has it they were even trained in martial arts. Even the police are no match for them, so the elders do not provoke them and give them full freedom of action. Now our hero understood why their faces were so similar, but he was interested in the answer about martial arts. And also a classmate added that Lu Tao is from their class, he is one of the few who hasn't succumbed to them yet. And the guy sitting by the window with the scars and abrasions was just that. The guys came up to him and asked if he had forgotten the pain they had inflicted on him. They added that he knows the rules and let him follow them to the roof so as not to embarrass him in front of the whole class. Our hero looked at this and thought it was time to restore his reputation, but he doesn't want to reveal his identity at school. So he decided to trip up to get in trouble. One of the guys grabbed our hero and asked how dare he do that. The girls immediately started saying that he was new and didn't know anything here, so let him go. The guy replied to them that they would take care of these guys first and then play with them. One of the sons asked our hero, is he hiding under a woman's skirt? Lu Mang replied that he would be better than a girl like him. The guy really fell apart and asked to be taken to the roof. As soon as everyone left, the teacher started calling school security and told them to send someone to the roof. Meanwhile on the roof, the brothers began to ask the disciples what they would say last. The classmate apologized for getting our hero involved, but he replied that he did it himself. Lu Mang asked if there are security cameras here, Lu Tao said no, but she didn't understand why our hero was asking that. Meanwhile, the teacher led the guards to the roof and asked that they stop them quickly. What was her surprise when she saw the vice principal's battered sons on the roof. A little later, Lu Tao treated our hero to a can of soda for helping him out. Lu Mang said that he helped him for a reason and he needs help from Lu Tao. Our hero has just transferred to this school and he needs to know the real situation of this school. He starts to ask about the girls, but Lu Tao only knows that Chin Chin looks like a grown lady. He asked if our hero was only interested in information about girls. At that moment, some girl walked by him and tried to use the technique. Our hero stopped her and realized that it was a Mainshan school technique. The girl replied that she was from the younger generation of Mainshan school. Her name was Yunkwai Feng. Our hero approached her and said that he was from the Win generation of Mainshan school and his name was Lu Man. The girl realized that he turned out to be her uncle's mentor. They got into a conversation and leaving, our hero offered her a coffee together. Our hero realized that his niece saw him dealing with those guys on the roof. The girl said that these guys were students, but because they were constantly bullying their classmates, she expelled them. At first she wanted to stop the two of them, seeing how they had surrounded the guys. But it turns out that Lu Meng uses the same technique at Mainshan High School. She just wanted to go over and try to do it in front of them as well. The guy asked if she was pulling these tricks trying to attack him. After all, if the master finds out about it, he'll punish her. Yun replied that she was wrong and just wanted to try to perform her uncle's technique. She asked that our hero say nothing to the master. Lu Meng asked if the girl also goes to this school. But she replied that she was the dormitory commandant. Our hero realized that this beauty is in charge of the dormitory where he lives, and she is also his niece. The girl decided she would be the first to leave and said goodbye to the guys. Lu Tao said he would now hang out with our hero and he agreed. But only on the condition that he doesn't tell anyone what happened today, or it'll end badly for both of them. Suddenly, Lu Meng stopped the ball flying into himself. He thought his niece would attack him again. But when he opened the balloon, he saw a note with a meeting time written on it, and it's not clear who it's from. In the morning, Lu Meng promised to take the girls to the most expensive place in town, and now someone wants to meet him here tonight. He's also never met the owner of this note, but judging by the speed of the balloon, it's definitely not a general. It didn't matter to the guy who it was, he'd solve everything because he wasn't afraid of anyone. Lu Tao told them to go back and think about this balloon, otherwise, they have been sitting here for half a day thinking in this heat. Meanwhile, one of the villains wanted to steal a purse from a passing girl. Our hero noticed this and immediately ran to help. He said that this thief can't escape. After all, what does he think when he steals only half of the things and leaves the rest? Suddenly the hero was right next to the girl and she asked why he was holding her. He said it was a misunderstanding and someone just wanted to steal stuff from her bag. Since they're in school now, he introduced himself and said he's Lu Meng's third grader. The girl pulled some kind of love confession out of her bag and started reading it. She said they couldn't be together and that he should take the letter back. Just then, the girls in the class came over and asked if Lu Meng had managed to meet their little sister. The girl started to tell her sister that this is a maniac and a pervert, but she just told them to go and have some tea. When our hero turned around, he saw Xiao Shui, who scared him a lot. He asked if she was in love with him. If she was, let her confess already. But the girl only walked away and told that narcissist not to touch her sister, for he didn't deserve her. Our hero just waved his hand thinking he still had a long way to go. When it was night time, the guy climbed up on a pole and looked around. He couldn't find who called him here. Suddenly the principal saw him and started shouting something to him. Our hero climbed down from the huge pipe and began to ask how he could help Mr. Sun. As it turns out, he wants to call Lu Meng for dinner. Our hero thought this was strange, as he had recently beaten his sons and bullied him. The boy said it wasn't necessary, but Mr. Sun began to plead with him further. He added that Lu Manu only needs to pick up his keys at the front desk. It seemed like a good offer to our hero, and he agreed after thanking Mr. Sun. The one started to leave saying they would see each other tomorrow night in the VIP building of an expensive restaurant. A little later, there was a knock at our hero's niece's door and she went to open it. And as it turned out it was Lu Meng. he apologized for disturbing you. The girl asked what happened to the guy and why he came. He said that teacher's son had sent Aita to get the keys. The girl remembered that the teacher had said so, and asked her to wait a moment. She was about to give the keys to our hero. Suddenly they fell out of her hands. She bent down for the keys, standing in a very good pose wrapped around Lu Mang. When the girl wanted to give him the keys, our hero was already lying on the floor. The next day he dressed in his sports uniform and ran to the stadium. He asked the girls if they missed him. When the game started, the guy realized he needed to win this bet, to make up for lost time. But this time, our hero has to be more careful, because he doesn't have to hide his real powers. Well, in one of the games, he had an amazing performance. People who watched it thought he was flying. After that, a lot of people wanted him on their team. There was a man watching from a window, and he asked if it was the same guy. Mr. Sun replied that this guy is always putting him in trouble, and asked that the man get it tonight. The guy with green hair and a knife in his hands said he'd handle him nice and slow. When Lu Mang arrived at the restaurant, he was greeted by Mr. Sun and told to take a seat. Mr. Sun added that he respected our hero as a man, so he offered him a drink and a talk. The guy said that Director Sun was surprisingly very kind. Meanwhile, the green-haired man was already on his way. He had been told exactly where Lu Mang was. He was already walking with a smile on his face, but suddenly someone tapped him on the shoulder. The guy immediately started asking if they really wanted to get themselves in trouble for pushing him. It turned out to be the police. They apologized and parted ways. Meanwhile, in the restaurant, the hero was already lying drunk on the couch saying how good the alcohol was. Suddenly, someone turned off the power switch in the entire restaurant. At the same moment, a man wearing a concealed suit and holding a knife walked in. What was his surprise when there was no one on the couch? Our hero was already prepared and said that he was sure that man wanted to fight him. Our hero activated the holographic thermal mirror and saw the poison dagger in this man's possession. This was very bad for him, and that man had already started to attack. With a deft move, Lu Mang dodged the stabbing blow. He began to look into his opponent's eyes but still couldn't recognize his fighting ability. So he decided that he would teach this man how to use a dagger. The guy made a few quick moves that resulted in that this man's suit was beginning to tear. The information she was given was wrong, and the mission was probably a failure. Our hero said he didn't expect the front to be a girl. He added that he should send her a new one in a dress as a sign of apology. Without thinking long, the girl jumped out of the window and ran away. The boy wondered why this particular destroyer. He'd have to find out. The next day in the principal's office, Mr. Sun started asking that man how he became an annihilator. That guy replied that Lu Mang was lucky. How could he know that this annihilator would be there? But Mr. Sun was happy at least that someone took care of him for them, so they need to put their master plan into action. Just then, Mr. Sun's son walked into the principal's office. Mr. Sun began to say that Li Xiaoyong has a daughter. If his son takes care of her, they can change the situation of the Eastern Ocean for the better. His son was also surprised, because he is handsome and rich, but somehow he can't pick up this girl. His dad said he needed to hit hard, and the son agreed and started walking away. As he was walking down the hallway, a pall rag flew into his face. He asked if the cleaning lady didn't have eyes, for she's the reason he's dirty now. As he left, he told her to get out of here if she couldn't do her job. The cleaning lady was a disguised Lu Mang. He overheard the whole conversation outside the office. A little later at the entrance to the elite club, the guard stopped our hero, because he must have a membership card and must comply with the dress code. He dialed his mom, said he needed her help. Meanwhile, on a date with one girl, the principal's son started giving her some kind of box. Turns out it was a gemstone, the guy said he wanted to take the girl as his wife. But she just tossed the box saying she'd never be with someone like him. Dressed according to the dress code, Lu Mang started to enter this club, but his colorful haircut wouldn't last that long. He immediately started running along the corridor after being let inside. Meanwhile, the principal's son was already drunk and started pulling off his jacket saying he shouldn't be afraid. He started to walk over to the girl lying on the couch to do what he needed to do to her. His friend prompted him to do his business sooner, for it had been hours. Suddenly, Lu Mang burst through the door. He said the guy wouldn't have thought of it, that's why the rape idea is really bad for his dad. Lu Mang added, if he is a real man, let the one fight him. The principal's son was furious at the words of our hero and his father. Lu Mang asked if he hadn't had enough of what was on the roof. He knocked the bastard out with one punch. Our hero turned to someone to tell them to come out and not hide. They put a knife to his neck and told him not to move. A man with green hair appeared behind our hero, and said he had been waiting a long time for him. He added that no one survives when he is close, and last time Lu Manu was too lucky. Our hero didn't think long, just hit this guy on his weak spot so that he immediately started writhing in pain. Leaving Lu Mang wondered how this man knew him. One girl asked if the guy had really come to save her. As it turned out, she saw everything as our hero came to her rescue. Lu Mang embarrassedly replied that beauties should be protected. The girl hugged the guy sharply and said it was really hot in here. Thoth realized she was sobered up, but something strange was happening to her. He told her not to force him, he couldn't take it anymore. The next day, our hero was peeling an apple and wondered if the crime rate in his town had increased significantly. Suddenly the girl who was lying on the bed woke up and asked what they were doing here. The guy handed her an apple and asked if she didn't remember what happened last night. The girl remembered. She had agreed to drink a glass of wine to get Sunli off her back. After that, she remembers someone carrying her. Our hero replied, he knew this would happen, that's why he came to save her. The girl thanked Lu Mang and said that she didn't want to see him anymore. The guy got angry and asked how she could talk to him like that since he saved her. The girl explained that she then saw only him and no one else. The doctor came into the room and told them to stop arguing. He added that the patient needed to rest. With an evil look, our hero started walking and said that this was indeed true and her brain needed a rest. While Lu Mang waited for the elevator, he wondered what he had done wrong. After all, usually in such cases one would throw oneself into a hug. It seemed to the guy that the woman's heart was very complicated. The more you think, the more your head hurts. Suddenly at the exit of the elevator, some girl crashed into him. It turned out to be Teacher Lin. She apologized for what happened. The guy looked at her in surprise and asked her why she was texting like that and where she was going. The teacher said that all the male teachers have gone to the meeting, therefore, there is no one to save Chen Shui and Qing Qing. As they walked down the street, Lu Mang asked what had happened to them. Teacher Lin replied to let the guy get on the motorcycle with her first, and she would tell him everything on the way. Our hero sat in the back and held the teacher's waist a little too tightly. He said he didn't want to hold her so tight either, so she should go slower. Teacher Lin clarified if Lu Mang didn't know Chen Shui's past. As it turned out, she had rabbit lips from childhood, so she was bullied at school. In middle school, she was able to get rid of it by having surgery, but even so, she couldn't get rid of her nickname. Chen Shui was often restless, and felt inferior. Today she went to a bar with Chin Chin. Looks like some bullies are bothering them there, because she reported it to the teacher. Hearing these words, the guy said he would drive the bike. He tore from his seat in such a way that a strong wind rose from his speed. Meanwhile, in the bar, hooligans were harassing girls, offering them drinks. Those asked to be left alone, for they could no longer drink. One of the hooligans told the pretty girl to drink this glass and then they would let them in. The girl agreed to this condition, but only if the bully kept his word. The bully decided to help her and forcefully poured the entire glass into her. The bully realized that the girls called the teacher for help. The girls were already out by this time, the bully boss had intended it that way. Suddenly someone shouted the name of this bully and he turned around in bewilderment. Our hero flew into him off his foot and said he was his uncle. That blow knocked all the teeth out of the bully's mouth. His partners didn't realize what kind of man stood before them. They decided to teach our hero a lesson, because he beat up their boss. But a moment later, most of their lineup was lying in a battered heap. Lu Man led the two girls out of the bar and into the street where Teacher Lin was waiting for them. After all these events, our hero finally got used to student life. In class, Lu Tao asked him why Chen Shui and Qing Qing didn't show up today. Our hero bluntly said they got drunk last night and they probably haven't recovered yet. Suddenly, the girl Lu Mang had saved recently told him to come over to her. All the classmates were shocked when they heard those words. They were very happy for their classmate saying he was very cool. Everyone began to discuss what our hero is not simple, because he was called by the ice goddess herself. Lu Manu liked the fact that his classmates didn't even know anything yet. The girl told our hero not to talk nonsense and to come out quickly. They came to the garden that was behind the school and the girl threw the guy a big wad of money. She said that this money was for medication expenses at the hospital. The guy replied that there was no need to do that and let her keep them. But the girl said she didn't want his money and said goodbye to him. Suddenly our hero got a call from the main office saying that he should be on standby, because a black angel had appeared. The boy was puzzled by her words, he didn't know who a black angel was. The girl reminded him of the drug dealer Zhou Chuan who had been eliminated last year. After he was destroyed, they found him bleeding from his comrades, he must have drunk their blood like water. Recently, someone made a hacking attack and infiltrated their network to get information about our hero, and it was the drug dealer's brother, Zhou Zheng. And his nickname sounds like the Black Angel. He is a member of an organization called Blood Angel, and their primary mission is to destroy terrorists in the US and Europe. The only member everyone knew about was Black Angel, no one could catch him, so he purposely left his name off. This time his target is our hero, so HQ is hoping for his return so they can ensure his safety. Lu Man said he couldn't. After all, this is a great opportunity to catch the Black Angel and find out the location of their organization. Even though it's very dangerous, the guy said the Black Angel won't get away from them this time. He said he would call the aid after he got off the phone with headquarters. 3 years ago, our hero went to the Middle East to destroy an organization called the Blood Angel, but something went wrong. And later, the Blood Angel's activities suddenly came to a sudden halt and no one knew why. The guy realized the Black Angel wanted to play with him. Suddenly he was startled by his niece who came out from behind a tree saying hello to him. She said that Chen Shui wanted to thank Lu Mang, but he didn't understand how. The girl took his hand and told him to hurry and let him follow her. They came up to some house and the niece said they had to go upstairs. The guy asked if Chen Shui was renting a room here. She told him that rent was cheaper here than downtown. When they stepped inside, the boy marveled at the cleanliness and neatness of her room. They were met by Chen Shui and greeted. The guy noticed that the girl's attitude changed dramatically, it made him feel somehow uncomfortable. Entering the restroom, Lu Mang began to do his business over the toilet. Just then, he saw Chen Shui's underwear hanging on the wall. Meanwhile, the girl didn't understand where our hero had gone. She realized that if he wasn't in the living room, then he'd gone to the restroom. And abruptly opening the doors, she saw him continue to do his thing. At what she saw, the girl on the spot blushed with shame. After a while, the guy asked and everything would be ready, because soon the guests would starve to death. The girl replied that there were still 2 dishes left and let our hero wait in the living room. The dish the girl was carrying smelled very delicious, so Lu Mang asked to let him try it first. The girl replied, even if he begs with such a beautiful face, he will still refuse. The guy proceeded to tell her several times to let her give him a taste. After that she got very angry and yelled for our hero to stop and not make her yell at him. When he wanted to move away, he accidentally hit the girl and the dish started to fall. Lu Man abruptly caught the dish and the girl. He once again asked if he could have a taste. Already sitting at the table having tasted all the food, our hero was just delighted and said that it was the best food he had ever tasted. Niece said they're going to Haidong University next week for the opening of a quantum computer. The guy realized that this was the most important project of the country, and the leading country would be the one that would be the first to master the technique. In the meantime, the police sent all personnel to the north room, for there was some kind of disturbance there. Quantum computers have computing power 100 octillion times greater than the most advanced computers. When the police officers went inside, the crook immediately pounced on them and started overpowering them. If someone masters the technology of this quantum computer, they will have the superweapon of the future in their hands. A mysterious Neo truck pulled up to some building. This turns out to be the building our main characters came out of. They talk about how Chen Shui's cooking skill increases every day. At the same time, the girl whispered to the protagonist that he had also helped her a lot. After that, the same truck appears behind the trio. The driver was holding a walkie-talkie and some kind of command was transmitted to him. Then the main character got a phone call from someone and decided to step away to take the call. And right after that, the driver pushed the gas pedal all the way in. The truck immediately sped up and began to chase the trio of protagonists. The girls were incredibly scared and didn't know what to do. At this time, the guy realized that now was not the time to cover up, because the situation was too dangerous. He then made a sudden leap forward and stepped on the bumper of the car with his foot. And then jumped up, holding the 2 girls close to him. But after that, the forces of gravity took the stage and the whole trio began to tumble downward. The truck from such a speed dropped all its contents, which in addition to boxes was also a mattress. And all the students successfully fell right on top of him. And the main character was especially happy, because he really liked the pose in which they lay in threes. The action then shifted to some aristocratic party in which Lu Mang was also present. The guard informed the guy that the Lu commander had been waiting for the guy for a long time, as she hadn't seen him in a while. Waiting for him inside the room, seated at a table, was an incredible beauty who had remarked on how much time had passed since their last meeting. But the guy got straight to the point. He said that during the day a car suddenly ran over him and he was sure that Zhou Zheng would never use such a dirty trick. In a few moments he changed his face, for it appeared that his niece was one of them. The commander said that the girl is a member of a secret, special Condor unit and is in charge of supplying materials. After that, the girl asked that her uncle take good care of her. The guy wasn't very happy about the news and thought she had been sent to spy on him. The girl reported that a certain black angel has arrived in the country and now a quantum chip has been stolen, but luckily the thief only has a fake and the original is kept at the school. As long as the enemy doesn't know he's got a fake, everything's fine, but tomorrow the school is planning a trip to the university, so the enemy might do something weird. And in fact, tomorrow will be the best opportunity to catch a black angel. The action moved to a dormitory in which the main character's niece was frantically searching for something. She bent down to check under the bed. But the protagonist reported that this time he was prepared and there was no way he would bleed out. Then she did manage to find some sort of small button and she pressed it right away. The wall to the dormitory moved away and revealed, lurking behind it, a secret room. Inside turned out to be a ton of different equipment and weapons, courtesy of Sis N. My niece said that there are so many different weapons and they should explore everything here. While the girl was interested in classic weapons in the form of various rifles and machine guns, the guy was attracted to the special suit. And then the guy found something even more interesting. It was some spy glasses. The guy immediately put them on and looked at the girl who was standing with the scar at the time. To the surprise of the protagonist, these glasses turned out to be really spy glasses and they allowed to shine through his various obstacles, including clothes. He decided it was too much even for him and tried to take them off. But he didn't succeed, for the girl turned her front toward him at the same second. In the teacher's apartment, at night, the protagonist sat and worked on his computer while sipping tea. He studied the layout of tomorrow's trip with the class, in order to come up with some sort of plan. He wondered what this Blacken wanted. After all, if he wanted to kill the guy, he didn't need to steal that chip. He also noticed unusual decorations on his dagger, which means it probably belongs to some organization. But the boy was determined. He said he would catch that Black Angel himself. Already in the morning, a busload of students arrived at Hainak University. Along with all the disciples, our Lu Mang also came out. All the students, hastily gathered in one place. Their teacher stood there and told them that they could now see everything for themselves. Is at 2 p.m. and they should all gather outside the main building. A friend of Lu Manga suggested that he wander around the university, because it is full of beauties. But the main character said he would be busy and they would have to meet at noon. The guy walked up to the university building and stared at it. Then he used those very spy glasses, and checked everything, but except for the rats in the vent he found nothing special. In his experience, the places he looked at might have points for a sniper or something like that. Suddenly, the guy was called from behind by some girl and asked why he was here. The one didn't realize who could be here at this hour. The girl said she was a teacher at this school and she was wondering what the main character's name was and why he was the only one here. He started to tell me that he was a student from another school and had come to see Hainan University. And then he realized he needed to take off his glasses so he wouldn't faint like the last few times. He started to tell me that he had just come to see the view from the top and was about to leave. Just as suddenly, a leaf fell on the teacher's head. The guy immediately shouted for the girl to stay put. Then, with a serious expression, he reached into her hair and pompously withdrew a leaf from there. It even embarrassed the teacher a bit, but she thanked the guy. What was her surprise when it turned out that instead of saying please, the guy grabbed her cheek and started trying to peel the skin off. At this time, there is a performance taking place outside Hainan University. Chin Chin and his girlfriend are also on it and having a blast. After some time had passed, the girl remarked that university life is awesome. But then something confused her. She said it was very strange that the manna never came. Then her friend asked what was the matter, if Chin Chin had missed him. Upon hearing this, the girl cried out and began to tell him that there was no way she could miss him. But the friend also remarked that it was strange, he didn't come even though it was already time for the gathering. All because the guy is still on the roof with the teacher. In a moment, a piece of fake leather fell to the ground. And then, the person hiding behind the image of the teacher asks how the guy was able to reveal his disguise. The guy slyly replied that he was just much more capable than his opponent and that was it. But the one isn't that bad, he recognized it was military X-10 X-ray glasses. Then Mang said that the moment he put them on and looked at the teacher, he was surprised beyond measure. The Black Angel's disguise was ingenious, he even guessed to tie the barrel to his underpants. When the guy told this, he burst out laughing and said that his opponent had just killed him with his image. The main character's giggle was interrupted by a bullet that flew a millimeter from his head. Followed by another, it was as if golden cartridge primers had crashed into the wall behind him. The maniac managed to draw his weapon and fire a few volleys and then asked if the guy was still laughing. Thoth replied that his smile the whole time was just coming from his confidence and the Black Angel should try shooting again. And then he added that this time they would even do without a fight. The events on the roof are interrupted by a very important scene in the women's restroom. The girl with the blue hair got terribly tired of standing in the long line. At some point it got to her and she decided to go see the situation on the 4th floor. Behind her back 2 more girls were whispering, they also wanted to go to the 4th floor, but one of them changed the other's mind. She said a sophomore girl once took her own life, and since then, strange things started happening at the school, especially in the 4th floor bathroom. Hearing this, the girl immediately changed in her face and decided to finish the long line after all. Meanwhile, on the roof, a firefight was going on. The protagonist dodged bullets as if in a matrix. At one point, he got close enough to deliver his blow. But his opponent, to the protagonist's surprise, was able to come back from the attack. The false teacher did a backflip and was already a few moments away from Lu Mang. False teacher patted cynically, she said that the guy deserved the title of soldier, because his actions were easy to predict. Then, she suggested, to play, inside this knowledge and the protagonist agreed to the suggestion. And at the same moment, the girl's natural urge took over after all and one dared to rise. Once on the 4th floor she found the hallway completely empty. For some reason there were no lights on the floor, and the girl could barely find the restroom in this gloom. Then, she began to reassure herself by saying that all these rumors are lies. In the next scene, a high school girl is in the restroom, pulling out her brand new iPhone, in order to distract herself. It seemed strange to her, she just now seemed to hear some sounds, even though there was no one on the floor. She began to reassure herself, saying that there was nothing like that here and panic wouldn't do any good. As suddenly, some creepy silhouette wearing glasses flew over her head. Eventually she thought she heard some familiar voice, and it sounded like it was coming from a neighboring stall. After that, the monstrous head of a high school girl's ghost appeared from there. When she saw that girl, she turned pale with fear. She decided to turn on the flashlight on her iPhone in order to get a better look at her target. And then he started telling me that she's a schoolgirl too, and she's basically the poor girl's sister, so don't let her touch her. And then the silhouette got a little taller and it turned out to be the scariest thing you can see in a women's restroom, it's Lu Mang. The schoolgirl couldn't take it anymore and screamed at the top of her voice. The one took the mop off his head and asked what Ms. Aya was doing here. The lady replied that the guy is a jerk. This is the women's restroom and it's better to ask him that question. The guy replied that it was a very long story and he didn't want to tell it. The girl kicked the restroom door in a rage and began to loudly resent it. The guy was walking away fast, and she was shouting after him that she had a different opinion of him. He just washed his hands and said he'd tell you all about it later. In the next shot, the main character is chasing the false teacher through some clearing. At one point, unexpectedly, the not real teacher stopped for some reason. The thing is that they ran up to the very concert where the main character's acquaintances were. The Black Angel turned around and told the guy to end things right there. He began to ask if his opponent was so afraid of him that he would decide to use such cheap tricks. But in the next second, the opponent swiftly approached Lu Mang and landed a crushing blow on his abdomen. A red car was speeding down the freeway. Inside, the protagonist's supervisor in the earpiece and took the signal that, for now, no news from Lu Manga. Then the transmitter began reporting a red signal. She was informed that the target had been hit. The girl at first did not believe what had happened, but when she realized that Lu Mang was in danger, she immediately began to act. She made a police U-turn right on the highway and went to his aid. In Hainan University, the party was in full swing. At this time, the the girlfriends were discussing why the protagonist was still missing. But the guy he was standing across from the false teacher in a fighting stance. Opponent said that this is the level he expected from a special forces soldier, even though he pro-attacked, but the guy is still standing. He replied that it's all about the Black Angel hitting like a girl. But then something strange happened. Suddenly the skin on the fake teacher's arm began to peel off. Neither she nor the protagonist realized what had happened, but the guy decided to seize the moment. He had taken the hint that still the opponent's punch was strong, but now was the best moment to attack. He ran up and threw a punch right in his opponent's face. But to his surprise, he managed to stop the attack with one hand, at the last moment. On the arm of the delicate and feminine teacher, incredible muscles with muscles protruded. Black Angel said his disguise time was up, but it was even better now. While he was ranting about his masculinity, a second fist flew across his face. The guy said he's been patient for too long and now he's ready to fight for real. From such an attack, the glasses fell off the former teacher's face and her hair grew longer. In front of him was an incredible man who would say that right now his strength would truly amaze Lu Manga. Turns out it was the battle that put our SWAT king in danger. His opponent possessed incredible strength and it was a surprise to Lu Manga. The guy couldn't hit any of his attacks, even though the opponent didn't even move from his spot. He said that these strikes were too slow for him. Then he came in sharply on the flank, and said he was embarrassed at how shameful the guy's attack was. The protagonist didn't have time to react in any way and received an incredible punch, right in the stomach. And from such force, he pulled back a few meters, but his opponent didn't even think of correcting the turnovers. He continued his series of punches and landed another attack to the face. And the next blow seemed to nail the guy to a tree. Even the girl standing at the party could hear something going on not far from them. At this time, the Black Angel told the guy that it was his time to feel the pain of losing his brother. He stepped his foot on the protagonist's face, which made him ecstatic. His jubilation at his victory was interrupted by a voice from behind him ordering him not to move and pointing a barrel at him. Warden Lee Manga ordered the Black Angel to lie down on the ground or else she would blow his head off with a gun. The Black Angel told the hero that his old sweetheart has come, but he doesn't want to kill him now, it would be too easy a death for him. He turned his back on the protagonist and said that they would see each other later and that's when he would definitely win. The Black Angel folded his hands behind his head, pretending to give up but in fact, he pulled out a dice. The girl didn't expect what appears to be a smoke grenade to explode right on top of the Black Angel's head. While the smoke was clearing, the enemy managed to escape from the battlefield. And the girl, as soon as she didn't find him there, ran up to help the protagonist. She said she's gonna help the guy, and she's gonna get him to the hospital. And the guy really underestimated his opponent, he wondered who the Black Angel was. In the hospital, the protagonist was confined to a hospital bed and hooked up to a life support machine. His commanding officer sat beside him waiting for the boy to wake up, while saying the guy has to get well at all costs. The attending physician explained to the girl that the protagonist is in critical condition. He has many internal fractures and even ruptured internal organs, treatment should take about 6 months. The doctor then said that if the guy couldn't get better, he would spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. Hearing this made the commander cry. At this time at school, the teacher was telling the whole class that the main character was badly injured. She then asked all her students to be careful. The students whispered about why Lumen might be badly injured, theories abounded. At this time his friend sitting near the window decided, he needs to ask the guy what happened, because he had been hiding too much from him lately. At this very time, in some jungle, a Black Angel was resting in his residence. He was holding a vial of purple slurry and talking about how Dr. Lee had incredible skill. The man standing next to him reminded him not to let his master overdose, for it could alter his chromosomal cells. The Black Angel was angry to hear this. He said he was aware of it, and then decided to turn the subordinate on his head. Nothing confused him, and he asked why the master was looking at him so strangely. Bureau Dick, who is a subordinate of the Black Angel, asked why the master went to so much trouble, for the death of one man. The latter replied that the subordinate knew nothing, and the lumen was not just an abundant prey for him. At this time, a thunderstorm began to brew in the city. In such horrible weather, the protagonist was recovering and dreaming about his horrible past. The girl was chained to a chair, and in doing so, wrapped in a pack of TNT. The villain, in retarded clown makeup, was holding a detonator and shouting at the main character to approach. The pompous one was standing in the hallway telling the villain that there was no way he was getting out of here. Night had fallen and there was only one janitor sitting at the front desk of the hospital. Then some girl dressed as a doctor entered the building. She walked over and asked where the room of a patient named Lu Mang was located here. The girl looked at the name tag of the lady who had come and saw the position of superintendent there. Then she apologized to the principal and said she just had to go left down the hall. The masked doctor thanked the girl for her cooperation. At the same time, in the dream, was the height of the drama. The villain pressed the explosive device and began to flood with laughter. He shouted that the girl was definitely finished now and wished her a happy birthday. Somehow the explosion didn't happen and he pressed again. His frustration was unbounded. Somehow the device didn't work. The protagonist then said that he had long since defused the bomb. Afterward, the enemy pretended to be sad, but it was only a ruse. Turns out there is a small trigger button under the big trigger button. The guy couldn't have expected this, and all he had to do was scream before the explosion. And the next second, the whole building went up in flames. Lu Mang only had time, just in time, to cover himself from the incredibly bright flash of light. And when he withdrew his hand, he found himself outside the church building. At the same time, in reality, a strange doctor found the protagonist's ward. She quietly opened the door and began searching for something in her sinus. The guy heard a voice saying that he would never forget what happened that day, and the false doctor pulled out a syringe of purple liquid. The guy, at this time, was inside a mind-bogglingly expensive church. On one of the parishioner benches sat a man in a cylinder. The mysterious persona said that she had been waiting for the protagonist for a very long time. The guy asked who the man was and why he was waiting for him. The interlocutor was surprised that the protagonist didn't remember anything, and he deigned to explain. The man in the hat said he was part of the main character and it was the guy who woke him up. In other words, this is what his subconscious looks like. The guy was just shocked to hear the news. At this time the girl at the front desk was apparently looking at something on her phone. Lu Manga's former mentor approached and asked if the superintendent had already been to the protagonist's room. The girl replied, while quickly hiding the phone, that she did, except that the superintendent had a different last name. The woman figured it out right away. She rushed into the hero's palatugan and screamed for security to be called there immediately. At the same time, the protagonist continued his monologue against the backdrop of the crucifixion. The subconscious began to tell me that the guy's physical ability is very far away, but there is incredible power hidden in him. The catch is that when a guy gets seriously injured, that energy can come out. Guy paraphrased, in other words, the subconscious mind can give a hero incredible power. Ono replied that the guy should get it himself, and then pounded the ground with her pole. With the help of some magic, the subconscious mind began to crash the earth under the feet of the protagonist here. The guy didn't have time to do anything, and in a few moments he was flying somewhere into the abyss. He found himself in some kind of room, as if from a matrix. His subconscious flew in after him and apologized for scaring the hero so badly. The man in the cylinder continued his story. he explained that in addition to physical trauma, one must also pass a mental test. And then said they're going to start testing right away. Something happened and the guy just blurted out in surprise. In an instant, the figure of a black angel appeared in front of him from nowhere. In the ward, the protagonist lay helplessly in front of his executioner, being passed out. The fake doctor pulled out a syringe and said it was the most poisonous cyanide of all cyanide, and this time the protagonist was definitely finished. The guy was still unconscious. Well, something stopped the black angel, something was wrong. The man himself doesn't understand what happened, why he can't kill the person he hates most in his life. As he hesitates, the main character's commander is already rushing down the hallway. At the same time, in the guy's subconscious, the black angel had already acquired a respectable gentleman's costume. Lu Mang was clearly not thrilled to see this man in his head. Black Angel asked how frustrating it was to lose for the first time for the protagonist. Does he really want to admit defeat? If he does, he'll be considered a loser for the rest of his life. Black Angel enjoys his domination. He asks why the guy is quiet, isn't it out of fear? And then, he gets punched in the face with all the rage built up inside the protagonist. At that, the Black Angel flew off into the distance. But apparently he doesn't care for it, but he tells the guy that the punch was a good one after all. Lu Mang says he's never been afraid of anyone, and last time he was just a little careless, he paid for it. And this time he can definitely win. The commander runs into the protagonist's chamber. But, surprisingly, there is no stranger in the ward, only the protagonist lying quietly in his bunk. She realized immediately that it was probably just a false alarm. And the Black Angel, in the guise of a doctor, managed to hide in the front of the building. The woman sat down with the Lumang and said that if he was not cured she would resign to take care of him for the rest of his life. The calm environment is ruined by the life support machine. It sounds the alarm, the patient's blood pressure has dropped dramatically and it shows signs of cyanide contamination. The girl immediately started calling for the superintendent. Subconsciously, the protagonist tries to hit his opponent with a flurry of punches but is unsuccessful. Black Angel taunts his opponent. He says the guy is still too slow for him as well. The guy is really worthless to him, and so he prepares to attack himself, charging his fist with some energy. But he failed, the protagonist stopping the swift attack with one hand. Angel couldn't believe what had happened. Could the guy really be able to read his movements? The protagonists then counterattacked with all his might with his foot, right on his opponent's head. From this, just like last time, the Black Angel also flew away a great distance. No sooner had he woken up from what had happened than the protagonist immediately continued and pounced on top of him. Afterward, the guy gave the rascal his holy too. It even made the dust rise in the neighborhood. The guy continued his series of attacks and battered his opponent as suddenly. The enemy was able to extend both arms and attempt to slam the protagonist's head, thus stunning him. Luckily the guy had time to react and notice it. He threw his head back and thus dodged the unexpected attack. The guy had to put some distance between himself and his opponent, at which point the latter was also able to stand up. Black Angel said that Lu Mang wasn't that bad after all and he's getting more and more excited about it. He angrily lunged forward to pounce on the guy and tried to punch him again. But in response, the protagonist simply ducked his head, just as the Black Angel had once done to him. He then grabbed his adversary by the arm and said how dare he make such a disturbance in his own world. Then he kicked his enemy in the stomach, which once again sent him flying off into a large distance. The guy threw off his jacket and said it was time to call it a day, he'd been asleep for too long already. To his surprise, he stepped on some strange pink liquid on the floor of the room. The pink slurry seeped from every crevice and filled the guy's subconscious with itself. Seeing all this, the image of the Black Angel realized that someone in reality had helped him. In reality, the protagonist's mentor was still sobbing over his body. Then a doctor and a nurse came running into the room. The doctor reviewed the contents of the computer that reported the alarm and then ordered to prepare for resuscitation. The incomprehensible liquid continued to accumulate in the protagonist's subconscious. Then, a small drop of pink slurry fell on the guy's shoulder. Because it was the effects of cyanide poisoning, he immediately stopped feeling his right shoulder. A moment later, he was completely drenched in a pink, sticky substance and completely unable to move. The Black Angel at the same moment remarked that apparently this substance had somehow affected Lu Manga. After that, he spread his arms and asked what he thought would happen if this liquid flooded him too. The sludge covered the Black Angel's entire body and he looked like a cyanide golem. At the same moment in reality, the patient's vital signs dropped as much as 20%. Seeing this, the doctor immediately ordered to bring in injections for the patient. At the same time, in his subconscious, the Black Angel completely merged with the slurry and became a cyanide jock. After which he snidely asked what's wrong since this is the main character's world, so why so weak? While Lu Mang couldn't even move, the reinforced opponent approached and started attacking the protagonist. Then, he said goodbye to the guy and delivered his crushing blow. But something went wrong. At the last moment some kind of green barrier appeared around the protagonist. At this point in reality, doctors used a defibrillator on the main character. But unfortunately, the doctor didn't see any result and said they did the best they could. The girl began to just sob at the realization of the whole situation. But in his subconscious, the guy still repelled the attack, much to the Black Angel's surprise. Then, the protagonist said that he can't stay here, because there are people waiting for him in reality whom he has to protect. After that, they finally decided to find out who would win. In the main character's room, the girl had already stopped holding her legs and fell onto his bunk. Sobbing, she said she wouldn't forgive the protagonist for this, for leaving her here alone. But then the protagonist's hand was on her head. The guy woke up and asked why the girl hated him so much. After all the events that had occurred, the chief, along with the doctors and the commander, were in the MRI room. While the guy was lying in the machine, the doctor saw something strange on the screen and yelled that it was impossible. Somehow, unbelievably, all of the protagonist's insides and injuries healed at 70%, including fractures and organ damage. And most unusually, all traces of poisoning have also completely disappeared. Then the session ended and the protagonist started to get dressed while asking what the two were whispering about. The girl was incredibly happy. She said that tomorrow the protagonist will already be discharged, and now he needs to go to the ward and rest. Afterwards, the guy apologized to the commander for making her worry so much. The girl was blown away by this answer, and she looked at the manga with an amorous gaze. At this time, the doctor came up to her with a folder and told her that the patient's general data was ready. It had been about 5 minutes since the guy had left the office and the girl was still standing there staring at the door. The doctor showed the report. It turned out that Lu Mangmi just recovered, all of his body functions have improved greatly. Literally, something impossible for the average person to achieve, so the doctor asked the captain if this needed to be reported to headquarters. The woman replied that it wasn't worth it and that she would figure it out for herself later. The guy went back to his room incredibly hungry. He didn't understand when this hospital was going to serve food. Then someone called out to him. It was a girl who came to visit her classmate. She specially prepared a whole bowl of meat for the protagonist. Just as he tried to put a piece in his mouth, he was broken through by another girl entering the room. Chin Chin began to blame her friend for the fact that they had actually promised to come here at the same time. Again, as soon as the protagonist tried to put a piece in his mouth, he was interrupted again. This time Chin Chin told the guy to try her dish first. Opening the box, inside were coals that were once meat. The guy was a little dumbfounded, he couldn't find an excuse not to eat it. He didn't have to look for her for long, for the girl forcibly shoved the food right into his mouth. Then the teacher and the protagonist's best friend walked into the room. And they had to see this awkward picture.